Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. I'm your host, Chris King. I'm a shamanic healer, ascended astrologer, retreat facilitator, microdosing guide, and I'm a spiritual business developer. I am here. My sole mission here on this planet is to help spiritual entrepreneurs and mystics become new earth leaders and tap out of the matrix. Brittany, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Brittany Renée. I'm a psychic intuitive embodiment coach, energy healer, code, and grid worker. And my mission is to help you remember who you are at soul level and embody that with pleasure and ease and abundance in your human form
Fuck yeah,
with
period.
things.
I appreciate you being here with me today. Uh,
Always.
there were so many different things that we could talk about, and you brought up the astrology that I've been downloading and the newness around all of that. And so we're going to go into some really complex topics today. It's really simple to me, but anytime I explain it to people, they're just like, what is happening here? So you may be activated during this time. Something may turn on within your system. Some type of DNA activation will take place as we talk about this energy, and a remembrance may wash over you, as a lot of what we're going to talk about was embedded in the field and in the not Earth, but the Taran grid, the 5D grid that we existed on for so much of our time here on this planet before the false matrix. So, we're going to be talking about the false matrix today. We're going to be talking about the number 13 and the code 13, which may activate something within you. So, make sure that you are not operating any heavy machinery or equipment. I'm just kidding. Um, it may feel like a microdose has hit you once this episode is complete. So, um, Brittany, you know that my favorite number is 13, and many of you all out there, 13 is a number that comes up for you a lot. And we know that's a feared number. I mean, I used to have Friday the 13th parties when I was a kid, because every day should be a party for Mr. Stellium and Leo. But I really felt this strong calling toward 13, and originally it was because it was such a feared number, and I felt like that can't be right. And I remember being told many times that 12 is the number of creation. And I was like, that makes sense. 12 months, 12 zodiac signs. It made sense to me. And then Metatron's cube came into my awareness back when I was 20, 21 years old. And I remember counting 13 circles or 13 spheres and being like, wait, hold on. This looks like creation itself, but yet there are 13 spheres. So what's up with that? So I even wrote an album when I was 19 years old called 13th Street. Okay,
Mm.
because a lot of times in cities they skip from 12 to 14, or even in buildings, it'll be building number 12 and then it'll go to 14. The 14th floor is the 13th floor. Don't you see
Exactly.
they can manipulate our consciousness just by naming something, just like astrology. Okay.
Mhm.
So, for those of you who are astrologers out there, this will trigger you a little bit, what we're going to talk about today, but it will activate you and it's opening up something for you. If you want to stay in the matrix and play the game and like win the game over and over and over, then turn this episode off. If you actually want to move to a new level altogether that is unlike anything you've ever felt or seen before and exists outside of space and time on the soul level, if you're ready to move into that, not during this incarnation or not even during this podcast, but in your spiritual process, if that's where you're oriented and you're awake enough to want that, then keep listening to this. Now, Brittany, I know we've talked about some of this before, and some of it has made your head spin because you're like, hold on, I'm still trying to master my Scorpio rising and what this Pluto thing is. Okay. So I want you to be the voice for all the people out there who not only are into astrology, but some people who are new to astrology, new to their awakening, or they've been around astrology for years, but it wasn't their thing, but they still hear about it and know about their own chart enough to speak to it. So I want you to be their voice because we may open a channel here and some of the information is very complex. So I may need your help transducing it down into digestible bite-sized pieces, which is not my forte.
Happy to do that. Yes. So for those of you who do not follow us yet on socials, I would invite you because there is some great, I would say, initial triggers for you to kind of look at. And I love the word trigger, and I don't actually use the word trigger in a negative connotation. So just let's lay that first. But you posted, I don't know when this was, this week or last week, about the 13th sign, 13th house. And I was like, wait a second. So, of course, me being me, I was like, well, now I need to go and figure out, like, what does this mean for me? Right. I wanted to know. And I don't really fully like cling to identities when it comes to the zodiac things, just because it's like, yeah, some of this is really resonant and I can see it. And then other pieces I'm like, don't really like, I don't digest it, I don't get it. So I just kind of keep moving.
Right.
It's
Totally.
triggered in such a good way because I was like, well, I'm really intrigued to know like what is that next level? And I think you've taken astrology to a level that, for those of you again who have not followed anything, we have an incredible new way of looking at astrology that Chrys has brought forth, which is a game changer. But let's just start at baseline here. Like, what does this mean? Because I know people are like, what do you mean 13? So, like, what does that mean? Is my sign going to change? What does that look like? And how does that even work? Like, what does that mean at its baseline foundational level? What is the 13th sign?
Yeah. So I want to preface all of this by saying that I was a tropical astrologer for years. I've been teaching astrology since I was 20 years old. Um, like I have workbooks around here somewhere back from 2012 where I had done astrology workshops. And so I really mastered tropical Western astrology and I understood very deeply sidereal and Vedic astrology, Hellenistic astrology, galactic astrology. I understand it even though I haven't been as into that one. There's a lot of different astrological um, modalities or systems that I have mastered or really have felt into. And the missing piece of it was on the sidereal side. Now, there's a lot of things I want to talk about here because first, it started with the 13. And I remember an article coming out years ago where it said there's a 13th zodiac sign and your sign has shifted and all of that. And I remember thinking, oh, that's bullshit. You can't change the seasons. You can't change the fact that spring starts on March 21st and so on. So I want to say this right now. Tropical astrology, even though we refer to it in ascended astrology as false matrix astrology, that does not mean that it's not real. It may be part of the illusion, but your bills, this table, you listening to me right now, we're in 3D right now. We're on the verge of this 3D, 4D cusp, trying to make our way into 5D, which is just a different dimensional frequency. And so, some of this, if you've not had your awakening, can not sound like nothing. But if you've had your awakening, you probably are noticing a shift happening within you. And this is very complex. So the 13th house is something that came in years ago for me, and I didn't understand it at the time. I was like, what is beyond Pisces? So Pisces is number 12, right? And what could possibly live beyond Pisces? Pisces is returning to the all, becoming spirit. What possibly lives beyond that? And then I started to get downloads. And here in the last couple of years, I've gotten major downloads that have come through, and I've let pieces of it come through at a time, not really understanding it sometimes, and then understanding it a year later when another piece would drop in. And I did understand fundamentally, though, that the 13th sign is Ophiuchus. So in ascended astrology, there are two charts. There's actually three zodiacs that we work with, okay? AM, FM, and PM. These are different frequencies. False matrix zodiac, ascended matrix zodiac, and then personal matrix houses, which we call the houses. So in ascended astrology, we actually take your true sidereal, real sky. So there's sidereal astrology, and then there's true sidereal. Sidereal astrology starts the zodiac at the beginning of the Aries constellation. Okay, but it still breaks them all up into 30-degree parts. It takes that circle and divides it into equal parts. And or Vedic astrology does. I'm so sorry. Vedic astrology still divides it into 12 equal parts. Sidereal astrology um, takes into account this other constellation. There are several constellations that sort of dance around the ecliptic line. For those of you who aren't aware, there are stars all around us, 360. But we only look at the star structures that live across the ecliptic line, which is the path that the planets will line up with. Because it's the planets that are related to your different chakras and energy systems that take the energy from the stars and transduce it down and fill up your vessel. However, because of the false matrix that we're in, there's another layer of the zodiac. There's another zodiac. So there are the constellations, and then there are the seasons. So, about 2,000 years ago, Ptolemy set the zodiac at starting at March 20th, March 21st at the vernal equinox. And we consider that to be the beginning of spring. So, spring is new. That's Aries season, right? Well, what about in the southern hemisphere when it's fall?
Mm.
Are they, what's happening with that? So there is a construct. The false matrix is created by us. Okay, the humans that are stuck in the matrix with the reptilians, we are the ones creating it because they can't create reality. So when we decide as a collective, and especially the powers that be that are using false matrix astrology to create reality or to create this false matrix, when they decide this is the beginning and that's the end, they break that up into 12 parts and it creates a cycle that repeats. Okay. The zodiac wheel is a circle. It's a line that's folded in on itself, so it's constantly looping. There's nothing wrong with matrices. There's nothing wrong with a matrix. There's an organic matrix that we're trying to ascend into. But even when you get to the organic 5D template or matrix that everyone's talking about, your soul is still going to call you to evolve and ascend out of that back into oneness, but back into your soul archetype. The 13th sign is the divine soul archetype or blueprint that you are as a soul, okay? That lives outside of space time reality, that lives outside of the 12 archetypes. Because when you look at Metatron's cube, there's the center of the cube, right? The primordial source energy. That is the 13th house. And then you have these 6 spheres around that, which come from the original one, which make up 7. But don't you see the matrix overlords, the false matrix architects, the archons, if you will, they want you to forget about that center point. They don't
Yeah.
want you to be aware of it. So they want you only focused on 6. What does that sound like? Okay.
Mm.
The 666 code is very much related to our carbon-based matter in our body. And 777 is the code for crystalline light, because that's what we're transmuting into is crystalline light. So you have to remember the center point and that there's 7 there. But then something happens in Metatron's cube. There's 6 more on the outside. Because in 3D, everything is in duality. Everything has a mirror opposite. Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sagittarius. So these spheres on the outside are the furthest expression or the mirror opposite of the ones in the center. Okay. So the 12 code is just 6 split into a duality. So it literally represents the zeros and ones that it creates or that it takes to create a matrix or a reality. The reality we're living in right now is not organic. It was not created through just source expression. I would liken it to um, having a baby and then cloning a baby. There's nothing wrong with cloning necessarily. There's nothing wrong with playing God because we are God, right? We're made of source. So we're just trying to copy source, but source didn't do that itself. We decided to do that. And so although we're living in a false matrix, it's still very visceral and real for us. So although there were several constellations that live around the ecliptic, Cetus, Cetus, um, there there's quite a few, but the one that really pokes its head in, or foot in, I should say, is Ophiuchus, Ophiuchus, Ophiuchus. the 13th sign. Now, Ophiuchus actually lives, I'm going to pull something up just so you can see what I'm talking about. Ophiuchus actually lives about toward the end of the Scorpio constellation, but I want to be very clear, and I'm going to pull up my chart real quick.
Yeah, I had to do my chart because I was like, well, what does this
And I
mean?
would encourage everyone listening to go to masteringthezodiac.com. The masteringthezodiac.com is the only website where you can pull up your chart where they use the actual positions of the constellations and the midpoint between the constellations. I'm going to share my screen because every other true sidereal website uses astronomical units, which is what NASA uses. It's for astronomy, not astrology. So it's not the precise, excuse me, it's not the precise midway point between each constellation. So this is my chart in true sidereal. Now I have Gemini Sun in tropical or false matrix astrology, but my sun is actually in Taurus. Okay, so the entire zodiac has been pushed back 24 degrees because of the precession of the equinoxes. Every 72 years, from our perspective, because we're also moving through the galaxy, the zodiac will shift backward 1 degree. So after the last 2,000 years since Ptolemy locked in the zodiac during the Greek times, okay, in the Greek myths, there was a lot of matrix control happening back then, especially when the Roman Empire took over. Let's look at the sky view here. Okay, so the zodiac will move back. That's why we're not moving into the age of Aries. We're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is backward from the age of Pisces, which we're currently in, right? So here's the age of Aquarius. Now here's the constellation of Aries. There's my sun in Taurus. So basically, what the true sidereal chart does is it looks to the planet and then it looks to see what constellation was behind the planet. Well, on June 15th, 1991, the sun was not in alignment with the constellation of Gemini, although that was technically Gemini season in the false matrix tropical zodiac. Because we decide, my camera's about to go off, by the way. I'm going to continue talking. It needs to cool off. It said it needs to cool off, and I'm like, I need to cool it. Um, so my sun was actually in alignment with the constellation of Taurus. You'll also notice that they're different sizes. They're not 30 degrees each. Leo is bigger than Cancer and Gemini. Look how big Virgo is. Look how tiny Libra is. Now we get to Scorpio. Look at this interesting little dance happening here. We've got Libra and we've got the scorpion here. Now look at the scorpion's tail coming down here. Now, this is really where it gets interesting because you've got Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, poking his leg right into the ecliptic line, almost to say, hey, don't forget about me, which is very similar to the fact that at some point a bunch of comet slash asteroids that we call centaurs wandered into our solar system and got locked into our orbit. And the first of those centaur asteroids to ever be discovered was Chiron, and they named it Chiron. And there are many others. But because Chiron was first, we locked the Chiron archetype into the collective field at that moment by naming that asteroid. And that asteroid was named by an astronomer, not an astrologer. So I believe it was channeled and it was divine. So, like Chiron, who wandered into our solar system and doesn't belong, and to me is the 13th planet, okay? Ophiuchus doesn't belong on this zodiac wheel, they say. Even if you go into the Egyptian temples, there are 13 zodiac signs, and the one that is covered up with soot, they cleaned off all the other ones. The only one they didn't clean off was the one that was the serpent bearer, Ophiuchus, which is based off Asclepius, which is the medicine man or the healer. Ophiuchus is the shaman, the alchemist, the healer, the resurrector. Ophiuchus represents resurrection. Now we know Scorpio to represent death and rebirth, right? What if actually Scorpio is death and rebirth? Because Ophiuchus is the rebirth part. And so we've been attributing it to Scorpio when Scorpio is actually death, death to the human, and then resurrection to the spirit. However, they've removed that. So what we've been doing is we've been moving from partnerships in Libra. And once we're focused on the other, we want to get really intimate with that other. We want to go deep with the scorpion tail here. We want to sink our scorpion stinger into the person, become one with them, get so intimate, control them, possess them. That's how deep we want to go with them, right? But then something happens at the end of Scorpio in the eighth house where there's this rebirth point, and then we become Sagittarius, which is going to, now that I'm sort of reborn from that, I've gone through the dark and now I've seen the light. I'm ready to teach others. I'm ready to make a career out of it. I'm ready to give back to my community, and now I'm ready to return to the all, and then reincarnation. Now I'm back in my physical body. Now, who here is tired of reincarnating into this grid over and over and over and over? So, yes, we all have Ophiuchus in our ascended matrix chart. You'll see in the chart that they're all different sizes. So you may have sun, like for instance, Gaia. In ascended astrology, you have a Gaia sign. In false matrix astrology or tropical astrology, my Gaia sign is in Gemini because I'm born on June 15th. And then my sun sign is in Gemini because I'm born on June 15th. My Gaia sign is opposite of that in Sagittarius because everything in the tropical zodiac has an opposite, exact opposite. In this zodiac, you can have sun in Aries and then Gaia in Virgo. But in the ascended matrix chart, I have sun in Taurus and Gaia in Ophiuchus. Of course I do. I have Chiron conjunct the ascendant, so I embody Chiron, and my Gaia is in Ophiuchus. So Ophiuchus placements, yes, there's a personality to it, but I want you all to remember that Ophiuchus is a multidimensional energy. Think about Jesus and his 12 disciples. Excuse me, think of Ophiuchus as representing Yeshua energy. Think about the Savior resurrecting, right? That code was there, even though Yeshua did not actually resurrect after 3 days, that he brought in the Christ code and the ascension codes. It was about ascension. And so what happens here is when we, in the false matrix zodiac, when we move through Scorpio, we have a choice, but not until we're awake. When we're asleep, we die in the physical body, and then we either continue on as spirit, teaching others in spirit, ascending in spirit, and then returning to the all and reincarnating, or you stay in your body and you become a new person, kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. We associate that whole process with Scorpio. And then after the butterfly takes flight, that's what we associate with Sagittarius is the flight, the traveling it's now able to do. But they skip an important part here.
Mm.
Ophiuchus comes in and goes, hey, I want to remind you that there's a 13th energy. Is the 13th energy out here in the wheel? Sure, we can count this as a 13th energy, but you notice it didn't make the circle any bigger.
Mm-hmm.
All it did was take one of the pieces of the pizza and make it two. But doesn't that still make it 13? It doesn't matter how big they are. It's still 13. So as soon as you tap out of the frequency of 12 and into the frequency of 13, you come into your Metatron's cube and you come out of the spheres and the archetypes out here, and you come directly into the center point, the 13th house. The 13th house is the divine womb of the Great Mother herself. The Great Mother came to me 2 weeks ago and told me, I am the keeper of the 13th house. I am the holder of the 13th house. The 13th house is the womb of Source herself. It's empty space, dark matter, black hole. Think, every single one of the atoms in your body that make up your physical form has a nucleus in the center of it. And in the center of that nucleus is dark matter, is what scientists call it, or empty space. And we know through quantum physics that we wouldn't even be able to understand this without quantum physics, by the way, this whole ascended astrology. And it's the nucleus in the center where all of those protons, electrons, and neutrons are coming from. Okay? And so you're made of, all of us, made of trillions of black holes. Now, Brittany, do you know where the nearest black hole is in our galaxy that we know of?
I would want to say near Saturn, but I don't know.
It's the very center of our galaxy. The galactic center is a giant black hole. Okay? And you could say, well, shouldn't it be a ball of light? No, it's actually a big old bottomless pit of darkness. And just like when David Icke, who is the one who talks about the reptilians a lot, he did an ayahuasca journey one time, and grandmother took him to the darkness and said, "This is where you're from." And he said, "It's just blackness. I can't possibly be from this." And she said, she called it the dazzling darkness. She said, "This is where you began." She took him to the 13th house, which is the primordial source of everything, because everything came from nothing. The 13th house is nothingness and everything all at the same time. It exists outside of time. Where Pisces is the dissolving of time, 13th house is the absence of time. It is, if you want to create something new, don't go to Aquarius. All Aquarius is doing is rebelling against what is to bring in a future timeline, but those future timelines are still a part of a matrix. The 13th house is where you originally came from, the dark womb of Source herself. That's where anything actually new can begin. Ophiuchus is not here in the center, it's out here. So basically, what it's saying is, hey, cut the scorpion's tail off, quit trying to sink deep, quit trying to go deeper with other people. That's the illusion. Go within and ascend, resurrect, rise up, Ophiuchus says, because Ophiuchus rules Chiron. And you can see Chiron's glyph is the key. So
Mm.
Ophiuchus is the gatekeeper. Chiron lives between Saturn and Uranus, acting as the gatekeeper between realms, the shaman between the physical dimensions, the matrix itself, Saturn, which is the false matrix, and Uranus, new future timelines. Before you get there, you have to cross the rainbow bridge, which is Chiron. So Chiron holds the key. Now, Ophiuchus is the key holder. Okay? Chiron is the key, which is healing yourself. The minute you say, I need to heal myself, you have turned your consciousness from pointing toward the matrix back toward pointing at you and polishing up your own molecule. And that brings more light of the soul into your body. Rumi said the wound is where the light enters you. So Chiron is what creates the wound for the light to get in, and Ophiuchus holds the gateway open to the 13th house. He is not the 13th house.
Got it.
You, here in the chart, you will always still have 12 houses because they always circle around the center point. Okay? But the end of the eighth house, wherever your eighth house is, the last 8 to 5 degrees of the eighth house is a trap door into the 13th house because the eighth house is also death and rebirth because it's related to Scorpio. And so, what we're asking you to do is instead of dying and becoming the butterfly, okay, instead of going into the dark and then creating a new form here, we're saying go into the dark, remember who you actually are, which is a divine soul blueprint. And then you can access the energy straight from source rather than going to the priest, rather than going to the astrologer, rather than going to something outside of yourself. You're actually pulling in your soul into your body. When they say enlightenment, they mean in light end. So, what Jesus or Yeshua, who represents Ophiuchus energy, was trying to say is we are all sons of God and children of God, and we are all made of it. We are it. So, if you can remember that you are the soul instead of this human expression, you're working more with the 13th house and the 13th sign, which is as unique as a thumbprint, the 13th sign, which is your divine soul archetype or blueprint. So Ophiuchus, although he is out here, he actually symbolically represents remembering the 13th energy, remembering who you really are without the influence of all of these 12 zodiacal energies or 12 archetypes, because I could say that there are 360 zodiac signs because every single degree has a different energy.
Mhm.
This is red. This is a little bit more orange red. That's a little bit more orange red. This is now orange. It's a little bit more yellow orange, a little bit more yellow orange. It's a total spectrum like a rainbow. Your eyes see red, orange, yellow, blue, but there are trillions of colors in that rainbow, all slowly becoming something else. It's just our limited visible light spectrum that doesn't allow you to see more than that. But even within what we can see, there's red orange, there's yellow orange, there's yellow green, there's green. It's all one band of energy. And remember, there are six energies that have an opposite. Capricorn is Cancer, just expressed in the opposite direction. Capricorn work, Cancer home. Taurus, I have. Scorpio, I release. Gemini, I think. I study. I focus on the details. Sagittarius, I know. I teach. I'm the big picture thinker. They're the same energy, though. Aries, I am. Libra, we are. So
Mhm.
we have to collapse the duality and go back into the center, which in quantum physics we call the 0 point field or the quantum field. This is where anything truly of an organic source nature can get in. So I'm not saying we're going to ascend into nothingness and go into the 13th house in this lifetime. We have to point our gauge and our trajectory toward that. And we have to remember to heal ourselves and remember that Ophiuchus represents an opportunity for us to make a choice. Do we keep this Scorpio to Sagittarius, which means that we die as a human and then we teach from that perspective, and then we go through this whole process of going into Pisces and returning to spirit so that we can reincarnate again? Or do we move out of that whole grid altogether and move into an entirely new reality where we create reality as a God or as a source itself? Okay. So I know this is a lot of
Mhm.
information and it's pretty heavy, but it's important because even if you're not remembering everything right now, it's activating something within your system. There's a remembrance. Brittany, before the false matrix was implemented, I've been getting a lot of downloads about this as well. Most of our astrology comes from the Sumerians and the Babylonians, which is connected to the Tower of Babel, which is apparently where we all used to speak one language, and then we were given many different languages and split up all over the planet to create a warring race, so that the archons and the reptilians could feed off of the loosh and the lower dimensional emotional frequencies that we emit through that tribalism and through that separation. And it creates more density here. I'm going to turn my camera back on. Let there be light. Ophiuchus says, let there be light. I'm coming back, maybe. Okay. Excuse me. What questions do you have so far?
Yeah, so that was actually a great explanation. So thank you for like running through this. My curiosity is, you know, and this is like something that I also am curious personally about, and I think others that are watching this. So when you do your chart in here, and then you're going to see Ophiuchus come up, right? I'm curious, like, how do you start to integrate or acknowledge
Okay,
or
beautiful.
with that? Because like mine, when I pulled it up, I was like immediately wanting to know where it was because I'm like, I want to know how, like, how do you integrate that? How do you work with it? And mine came up in the second house in Mars.
So you have Mars and Ophiuchus.
Right.
Oh,
So like how
beautiful.
do people start to realize how to integrate or work with this new addition? And also, I
Yeah,
mean, my whole chart's different, right? So it's like,
absolutely. So let's use you as an example. You in false matrix astrology, your rising sign is Scorpio. In ascended matrix or true sidereal, it's in Libra. Okay. So let's look at the difference here. For those watching, before you've had your awakening, you are going to, excuse me, you're going to resonate, embody, and really live out your false matrix chart. Why? Because it's been so encoded into the grid that the false matrix, haven't you all noticed that this false matrix is louder than your spirit guides and your angels and the whisper of your higher self? How it gets your attention more? So the tropical chart is locked in. It's also such a dense frequency and locked in, and we're all agreeing upon it. March 21st is the beginning. That's the beginning of spring. It isn't in the southern hemisphere, but for those who were creating this astrology, they were using that as a point to set this reality in motion, even if it was done by accident, even if they didn't know what they were doing, they created a matrix by doing that. And I believe that a lot of this was done on purpose because the Sumerians and the Babylonians which are around 10,000 years ago, and the false matrix began around 13,000 years ago in the introduction of the moon around 12,000 years ago. So the moon wasn't even there before. So your ascended astrology chart is different in many ways. We look at your tropical and your ascended, and we look at the difference. It's about 24 degrees off, but for you, for example, for your life and currently, even though you've had your awakenings and you're on the ascension path, Scorpio energy is very strong for you. Okay, we can't tap out of it just because we know about it. It's still very much in effect. However, at the time of your birth, the constellation, the light that was coming through on the eastern horizon, the constellation that was there on the east that was on the eastern horizon was Libra, not Scorpio. Okay, so why do you resonate so much with Scorpio energy? But because at that time it was moving through a zone or a bandwidth which we call FM7, false matrix archetype number 7. Because Libra is actually the constellation. The energy that we call the seventh energy in the tropical chart, we call FM7 or FM8, etc., so that we can know the difference. Your Scorpio energy is still there, but after you've had your awakening and your ascension, the organic light frequency starts to come in more. You start to resonate more with your ascended matrix chart. And so, if I was looking at your chart right now, I would say in your life, you've dealt with a lot of being the transformer for people. And that won't go away even if your rising is in Libra, because you, unfortunately and fortunately, have Pluto conjunct the ascendant. So it doesn't matter what sign it's in. You have the planet that rules Scorpio in the sign or in the placement of your rising sign. So even if you had Pluto in Virgo, or sorry, rising in Virgo, if Pluto is conjunct your rising, I'm going to describe Scorpio rising and you're going to go, that's me, because Pluto imbues that energy on your rising sign. Okay. But just in general, as you've ascended and as you've gotten older, Libra and Scorpio are both relationship oriented, very much so. But Libra is all about fashion and makeup and design and other people and being a people pleaser and keeping things balanced, being the peacemaker. You'll probably notice that being the peacemaker, being a people connector, being someone who is much more playful and flirty is going to come in for you. You're going to start to feel that shift for yourself as you've awakened out of this more intensity and going super deep and being in abusive situations, being in power control situations with people. Now things feel a little bit more balanced. Like for myself, I have Sun in Gemini in the tropical chart, and I definitely still very much embody, because not only have we identified with these signs for so many years, but it's just so densely in the collective field. However, as I've awakened and I've ascended, I have become much more grounded, much more logical, much more focused on money and security than I ever was before. And that's all Taurus energy. So I've actually noticed that both of them are happening at once. You have this 3D self, And then you have this 5D self that would exist had the false matrix and the moon and the reptilian overtake had never happened. Because I always ask people, what was happening on this planet before all of that happened? And also, what was going on before Maldek, which lives between Jupiter and Mars, which is now the asteroid belt? What was Maldek doing in our chart before it was blown up and turned into a bunch of pieces?
Right.
Whoa, who's going to ask these questions? Not the tropical astrologers, because they want your likes. They want you to book that program. And I want you to book the program too, but they want you to, they don't want to test that because astrology is a religion for them. So we
Mhm.
can't introduce any of these new energies. You have to be really open to it, and you also have to be awake to it because astrology can take you to such a mystical place. It can take you to the top of Mount Shasta with a guru who is floating on top of Mount Shasta and is defying gravity. That still is within the false matrix. You can go to a spiritual conference and connect to your spirit guides and still be experiencing the false matrix. Okay? There's something more organic that was existing on this planet for billions of years before this false matrix was introduced. Now, the Babylonians and the Sumerians, they are sort of the originators. The Babylonians are the originators of the 12 sign zodiac. The Sumerians sort of initiated the zodiac into being by grouping these stars together and creating these constellations, which scientists or historians will tell you they did that for mathematical purposes to, to study where the planets were so that they knew generally without having to have technology that it's generally over in this area. And some of that is true. It was part of mapping the sky for those specific reasons. But when we did that, it created these archetypes in a specific way, and it was done very purposefully.
Mhm.
Aries is the beginning. Taurus is where Aries is I am, and Taurus is I have, and Gemini is I think. That's a newborn, a toddler, and a 5-year old. Something was very purposeful about these 12 energies. Okay. Pisces is return to all. How come Aries isn't the beginning and Taurus is the end and Gemini is perfectionism? It goes in a specific order based on a life cycle, based on the Big Bang, how everything came into being. Aries is the Big Bang. Taurus is where all of that light energy turned into planets and stars. And because it was just energy and then it became something solid, Taurus. And then those solidified things started to have a mind of their own and intelligence, Gemini. So the zodiac is just showing you the cycle of how something becomes and unbecomes, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's in human form, a supernebula, it applies to all of it. So something was done on purpose, and the 12 was done on purpose too, because the Sumerians worshipped the gods that we know to be the Anunnaki,
Mhm.
which are reptoid beings that came here to mine for gold or energy fields, aura, aurum, and created a slave species that we know to be Homo erectus, or excuse me, Homo sapien, which is what we are. Okay. And the Babylonians are the ones who created this 12 sign zodiac. And the Babylon, David Icke actually calls the leaders of the Illuminati the Babylonian Brotherhood because it was Babylon where the Illuminati was founded in 1776, sure, what they call the Illuminati. But that idea or that secret society or that controlling force over this planet began back in the times of the Sumerians and the Babylonians, so thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. So Babylonian astrology is reptilian astrology, and it's not that they're masters at creating reality necessarily, we are. So they created a framework for us to exist in, which is zeros and ones. Aries and Libra, Pisces, Virgo. So these zeros and one codes are very strong. It keeps things solid.
Mhm.
Okay, just like a cube. That's why all of our buildings are cubes, because cubes trap energy. Saturn is the energy of the cube. A flattened cube is a six pointed hexagon. It's the six code. Okay. They know what they're doing. And so when we look at this, Ophiuchus is sort of a reminder that there's a 13th energy. And once you say, I am the 13th sign, I come from the 13th house, you immediately start to unlock yourself from the matrix control. Your soul is able to get in past the symphony of false matrix distortions. The soul and that fine whistle is able to get through and start to fill up your physical body. There's one thing to say, I've had an awakening. There's another thing for your body to actually be holding more light after that awakening. One is mental, another one is embodiment, because through these different awakenings, more light energy of the soul is expressing itself here. That's the difference between ascension and descension symptoms in my world. Descension isn't moving backwards, it's the soul descending, if you will, for lack of a better term, into your physical body as your human is ascending into more light. The light is then coming into the body. That's what Yeshua was trying to tell us, is that you can still hold your physical form and be totally soul infused. You don't have to be nothing. You can still be something, but through your own creation, not the creation of these false matrix overlords, archons, even the other humans around you. So it's about remembering that, yes, all these energies are here, but remember where you came from. Ophiuchus says, I'm going to push the tail of that scorpion down so that you don't go that deep anymore. We don't need to devote and obsess about these other people here. We need to remember who we are and that the other people are just an expression of you. So remember, Ophiuchus comes in and says, heal yourself. Heal yourself so that you can pull in energy from the 13th house. And then you can come back into that Sagittarian philosopher and teach from the soul perspective, not the human perspective, because Scorpio is the most human sign. Ophiuchus is the least human sign. People would attribute that to Pisces. But I said, what lives beyond Pisces, the returning to spirit? Pure spirit, the quantum field, nothingness and everythingness at the same time. 0 point field, empty space, dark matter. Now, what's also interesting is I got a download the other day, just the other day. They said um, that the galactic center is a gateway to the 13th house. And I said, well, I don't want to travel millions of light years to get to the 13th house. And they said, well, then just go into every atom and molecule in your body. Go within, and you will go to the 13th house. And psychic work is Pisces, but that's still receiving from spirit. It's not coming from the atomic structure. So what's interesting though, Brittany, is they say that not they say, we know that the galactic center lives at 27 degrees of Sagittarius in the tropical zodiac. That means that the galactic center in the ascended matrix chart is in Ophiuchus. The constellation of Ophiuchus right here is the galactic center. Actually, it's more down here, which means that Ophiuchus, the constellation, is the gatekeeper of the 13th house. Okay, because just like when you turn over someone's teacup and you look down in the bottom and you start to see the shapes, you see the divorce happening, you see the break happening in their heart field, and you're like, I don't know why I'm seeing that in all these particles. Astrology is a science, yes, but it's also an art. It's an intuitive art in seeing the symbology in things and knowing that it's reflecting as above, so below what we're experiencing here. So I'm asking you to join in with me, all of you, in rewriting this story, remembering that you're the 13th sign, that you come from the 13th house, and that the Great Mother is the keeper and the holder of the 13th house, and that all of this is a construct and it's all being agreed upon. And we're so powerful, our consciousness is so powerful as humans that we can agree upon something and create a whole reality that the reptilians can then infiltrate and infuse with dark energy. And then we'll keep repeating and replaying and creating that for them so that they can feed off of that. And so I'm asking you to rewrite the story with me. Remember to heal yourself, because before Chiron in 1977 and before now Ophiuchus coming back, this whole zodiac and all of the planets did not have any space for healing. Did it have space for introspection and transformation? Yes. You went from Saturn to Uranus. It was just
Mhm.
Uranus represents future timelines, but what if once you heal yourself, what's available to you is much higher? Okay? Like Mars in the ascended matrix world has a slightly different energy than it does in the false matrix world or lower densification world. Mars has a higher self and a lower self as well. In his
Mhm.
lower self, it's competition, aggression, sex, blood pumping, movement, action. In its higher form, it could be aligned action, sure, divine masculine energy, but it could also be the way in which we move toward our goals, manifestation, okay? And moving out of the sacral and then into the throat. So, Ophiuchus, having Mars in Ophiuchus, means that any placement that you have, people who have Ophiuchus placements, which we all have Ophiuchus in our chart, but I have Gaia in Ophiuchus, so you wouldn't know that from here because they don't mention that. But when you have placements in Ophiuchus, that's where you glitch the matrix. Ophiuchus is a matrix glitching energy. It's where you disrupt something and not in a rebellious Aquarian way, in a totally multidimensional, I just am not from this planet sort of way. Not I'm different from you all, but this is so different it's actually breaking the code or the illusion itself. And if you have any planets, anyone listening, at the end of your eighth house, you'll notice that we're using equal sign houses, not whole sign, Placidus, because this is your beginning point. This is your end point here in this incarnation. And splitting them into equal 12 parts is just fine. It's just a way to measure where we are in all of that. The end of the seventh house is really intense. The beginning of the seventh house is much more focused on how I show up in the relationship. The end of the seventh house is all about you and going deep into you. The seventh house isn't one room. It evolves as you move through it as well. So the end of the eighth house actually contains a trap door. Okay. This trap door, which is part of the Fibonacci sequence, the Fibonacci sequence is 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 13. And then another at 144 is the 13th number in the Fibonacci sequence. And 55 is a number that's also part of the Fibonacci sequence. So if I go from your descendant 55 degrees up, I'm right at the end of the eighth house. Okay. And eight is also part of the uh, Fibonacci sequence. So it moves from 8 to 13. It's actually 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So actually, 8 takes you into the 13th house. There's a trap door here. Ophiuchus holds the key of Chiron to that trap door. And if you go into that trap door, you go into the 13th house and you pull in divine source energy. Now, not everyone has these placements. Not everyone has Ophiuchus and end of the eighth house placements like this, or even strong Chiron placements. Does that mean they won't ascend? No. Someone has to be the pioneer and forge the trail for you so that you can walk it. It's meant to be walked. Being a pioneer wouldn't be a pioneer if we all were. So some of us did decide to come be the Chiron, be the glitch, so that you all could see the glitch and make a new choice. It is an honor to be the glitch, sure, but it is a hard path. The shamanic path, the chironic path, the Ophiuchus path is not easy. So, any questions that you have as the voice of the listeners, the people who are like, I don't even know what Capricorn means, let alone what he's talking about right here.
I'm like, as I'm listening, I'm like looking at my all of my own things, and you and I are gonna have to have a conversation after this. But um, I think that something that would be interesting for everybody, because I already did my placements before we even did this. So I think that if you're watching this, if you do your placements and then you go back and you kind of are listening to this, you're going to get almost a different dose than you might have just by watching this without it. So I would definitely say that. My question though is so a little deeper on what I had asked prior, because now I'm looking at this like trapdoor type of energy taking it through. actually, let me back this up to be a little bit more digestible. If people are really wanting to get to the depth of their ascended chart, are you offering, or is any of the team,
Yes.
Chris King,
Yes.
offering this?
So,
Because I already know people are going to be like, how do I get this done?
well, you can reach out to me now at chrisking.com or medicinealchemist.com. But here in the next couple of weeks, we're about to launch ascendedastrology.com. It will be ascended-astrology.com. And I'm like, do I even, uh, here, let
Because
me,
there's so much, and I think that, for me at least, like astrology, I love hearing about it and I love the way that you speak about it all the time. I think it's such a personal thing for people, right?
yeah.
And it's like I think a lot of us who are in the awakening path, the conscious path, it's a key of sorts for us in ways to unlock. And so I think that the questions that I think many people are probably going to have are going to be more personalized too, of like, well, what does this mean for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
so I
So,
think it's good for you to, I know we've talked a lot, this is a lot of information already. So kind of guide people into how do they find you? How do they work with you or anybody in the team? Oh, I'm so excited you're showing this right now.
so I am still in the process of designing and making this website, okay? Um, but this will be where you will go to get your chart calculators. The false matrix chart calculator will be on here, and the ascended matrix mastering the zodiac chart will be available on here. We have courses. There will be a free course on how to read your ascended astrology chart. There's also a course on more basic astrology and the basics of ascended astrology. And then there's the ascended astrologer certification for people who want to become astrologers, yes, but also want to learn this style of astrology. And then we're also offering one-to-one sessions, astrocartography readings, video readings, and chart reports. So if you want to get your chart done in a PDF format, and all of that information will be here. And this is very much about choosing, okay? And, choosing to stay in the matrix or choosing to leave. But we've got all of these different energies or offerings here. And this is Ophiuchus. So he's the serpent bearer. And I find it really poetic that the sign that is going to tap us out of the matrix is the one who controls and masters the reptile. Okay, so none of this is an accident, you all. You have to understand our collective oversoul has left all of these Easter eggs for us so that we would find ourselves again and remember the source knew I am so intelligent that even if archons and dark forces took over a sector of a reality that exists within me, those beings will, no matter for however much suffering happened, is how much light is going to be delivered in response to it, and the awakening and the ascension that these beings will take. Why do you think that the star angels are here and the ships are here and the beings are coming? Because they're here monitoring, watching, and in awe of the greatest awakening that has ever happened in this part of the galaxy, because no one has ever become this dense, no one has ever been infiltrated by such dark forces in this way. And the reptilians were trapped into this reality to keep the rest of the galaxy and the universe safe. Not the reptilians, but the archons and the reptiles, but they are locked into this matrix with us to protect. We're the ones that have to get to the source of the infection within this matrix and work our way out. We are also here, star seeds, light workers, mystics, Lemurian star seeds, or Lemurian reincarnates. You are here to bring those codes back. And so this astrology is all about remembering that and tapping into that organic frequency, because first we need you to master your false matrix chart. Okay, we need you to master the tropical chart energy and its effects on you. And many people resonate with their ascended matrix chart more. That's great. We need you to master that as well, because we're mastering different levels of this video game. Because once you master your false matrix human, then you become the serpent bearer, not the receiver of the serpent energy. Okay, did I just glitch out?
You did.
Okay, what was the last thing I said? Because you were
No,
also glitching.
your audio, it was just the video. Your
Okay,
audio.
awesome, awesome. I'm like, talk about a glitch in the matrix, you all. So, you have to master that, and then you go into your ascended matrix frequency, and you start to understand that that will start to show up more for you in your life. Like Taurus energy, I did not ever resonate with it before. There were similarities because I have so much Cancer in my chart. Like I understood the comfort, wanting to be at home, feeling secure and safe. Not the same thing, but similar because I have a lot of Cancer in my chart. But as I've awakened this Taurus energy, bringing things into form, building things, money, security, wealth, those types of things have come online for me greatly because my ascended matrix chart is starting to come in more. It's starting to show up as I'm tuning to that frequency, which was always there. It wasn't a turn off, turn on. It's more of a taking the earbuds out so you can see the song that's happening from the cosmos rather than the matrix that is being given to you in those earbuds, or the kind of the different shells that chip off and chip away and dissolve. And then once we activate that, this astrology is about remembrance. You have a Gaia sign, you have a Ophiuchus placement, you may have energies at the end of your eighth house. We look at the moon to be your false matrix NPC subconscious programmed self,
Mhm.
not your emotional self or your feminine self at all. We look at the North and South Node as your reincarnation trap programming, not your
Mhm.
soul's destiny. So, knowing this puts the power back in your hands because even astrology has been infiltrated. It was created to create a reality. So, now let's create a new one together. All right.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm
So,
so excited. Yeah, no, I mean, as soon as I saw your post, I was like, where do I find this information? I need to know now.
yes, I'm working diligently and
You are.
quickly to make this site and to bring this to the world. And please know that we are experimenters. I'm just still getting downloads about this astrology all the time. And as they come through, I'm applying it. So that's why I'm kind of delaying the course. I'm wanting as much to come in as possible, but know that it's going to take hundreds of and even thousands of people doing ascended astrology readings to really lock this new frequency in so that we can not only all agree upon it, but so that we can all report back. It took 40 years for Chiron to become as big as it is in the astrological community after Barbara Handclaugh's book. It took 30 years for Chiron to be a star the way that Mars, Jupiter, Venus. I mean, Chiron's just an asteroid. Why are we not mentioning any of the other ones? The ones that are bigger than Chiron, the ones that have been here longer than Chiron? Because that's the energy that we need is the healing. We need the wounded healer energy to transmute into the shamanic path. Chiron, Chyrон. So this is about the evolution of astrology, but it's actually using astrology to glitch the matrix. That's what it's all about. And many people are ready for this because they can feel the ping pong match that is astrology. You're never going to get out of it. And
Right.
they need this new energy and they need to remember. And Ophiuchus is the energy of DNA activations. Okay. So where Uranus is Kundalini, Ophiuchus and Chiron are about DNA activations that trigger that new light to come in. So we are putting the missing puzzle piece, the key back into the hole, the puzzle piece back where it belongs, so that we can ascend, period. Because remember, everyone, for the reason that these beings, these Arcturians, these Pleiadians, they're monitoring us. They do want to help, but they're watching us because they know we're going to do it on our own. And they're amazed that we are not only dissolving a false matrix, because there's the possibility for a 3D reality. But this 3D reality we're in is inorganic. It's a copy of a 3D reality. First, we have to get out of the copy of the 3D reality and then we have to ascend out of 3D into 5D, and that's all happening at once. That's a huge process to take. It isn't just I'm ascending as a soul from 5D to 6D in my physical form. No, you
Right.
have to unlock out of a matrix that was literally designed to be unhackable.
Mhm.
And the reptilians can't hack it because what it takes is the spark, which, and they call the human essence the spark because it contains pure source creative energy. It takes you remembering who you actually are, to quit being informed by the environment and the zodiac around you, and to go to your 13th sign and to the 13th house. And there you will pull in the organic matrix into this reality rather than trying to get out of this. You'll pull in the organic frequency into the matrix, which will, like a Drano, kind of clear out the pipes from within it rather than having, let's take the 144,000 of us and let's get to the top of Mount Shasta and float out of this place. That is not what's happening here.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The 144,000 is a DNA activating code. And remember this, there are 12 strands in your DNA, but the entire DNA complex is the 13th energy. Okay. So 13 is the code for the pure, divine, totally activated DNA. And if your DNA was totally turned on, you would be called what they call an Adam Kadmon or perfected human, which is an ascended master. So claim it now, and so it is.
So it is. Oh, thank you for this magic. And I know people are probably reeling watching this to figure out all of the things.
Or
So,
they've turned it off because they didn't resonate, because it's too much. They really don't like the fact that their mommy moon isn't their mommy, and that it's a wicked, artificially intelligent android stepmother. And it's very, you cannot go to the ball with us unless you pick all of these lentils out of the, it is a program. Okay, Saturn is not your father, the sun is. So Saturn is the matrix, the moon is the amplifier of the matrix, and the Saturn moon matrix is working together. So in your chart we also take those into account as well. We don't look at Saturn as just how you build reality and set long-term goals and deal with authority figures. We look at Saturn as how you template yourself even further into this matrix, and how you embed yourself further, how you become more solidly in the matrix. And the moon shows us the mind control program that's running within you, where your subconscious weakness is. The moon is the prison of the soul. Never forget. Okay.
love
Anything
that.
else, Brittany, before we go?
This has been amazing. My mind is already like ready to lean in
When
deeper.
we have the full chart readings ready to go and everything, you will be able to sit down with someone. We're going to start offering like a 60-minute session where you can get kind of an overview of the difference, and it kind of shows us here's where you start in the matrix and here's what you're ascending into and your healing journey with Chiron. Yes, you can get a little bit of that, but we're also creating packages, um, like the Matrix Mastery sessions or activations is what we're calling them, which is 4 different sessions. It's where we look at your false matrix chart, and then the next session we look at your ascended matrix, and then the next section we look at your transits and aspects, and then we have another one called quantum timeline activation, which is breaking it the entire chart up into 7 60-minute sessions, including a healing activation at the end. So over the course of 2 months, you can really go into your false matrix chart, into your ascended, into your transits and aspect, into your asteroids, your fixed stars, your Chiron energy, um, your Ophiuchus placements, where we can go much deeper. Because I don't know about you, but it would take many sessions to really do some of these charts justice. Okay, because of how complex it is. But for those of you who are light workers, star seeds, ascended souls, I know that astrology feels like a corner that you can't get out of. And so this is going to crack that open for you. And also, we can help you to understand this from a higher perspective and take you through that whole journey of your awakening and your ascension, where you're going and what that templating is. So I it is my honor to bring this through. It's been downloading for years. I was talking about the 13th house 5 years ago and had no idea what it meant, but I thought, I keep hearing 13th house. And so now it's coagulated into this download that is now a fully functioning organism, but it takes you all putting your attention on it, working with it, applying the information that's coming through for it to really solidify and ground. I have Mercury in Gemini, baby, in false matrix. Don't think for a second that my mind still doesn't work way faster than my mouth, okay? Um, so I appreciate you all for witnessing this whole process and for being here and for asking questions. Brittany, really bringing some of these questions people are going to want to know into the space because just like human design, no one understood it at first. It was very overwhelming, and just over the years, people agreed upon it. They started to resonate, and it's going to take that. It's going to take that experimentation to happen for this to really implement itself. And even if no one ever heard of or learned about ascended astrology or knew my name, as long as people remember these codes in 13 and that Gaia is your mother and that you have a Gaia sign and that the moon is a artificially implemented satellite, if we can remember those things, the soul will guide the rest of it. Okay, the astrology chart and the ascended chart is just going to show you the map in which that is going to happen, and so that you can follow it. So when the soul starts to lead you down a dark path, you can go, "Oh yeah, this is part of it." And so you don't resist it. That's what it's about, is creating harmony between your human and your soul. But if no one ever hears about me, I don't care as long as this gets out there, because just talking about it is glitching the matrix. Just sitting down with someone and going, that chart isn't who you really are. This chart is more of who you really are, but even then, your ascended chart isn't still the totality of your soul. So that's where we need to open up to that 13th energy so the soul can guide the rest of that process.
Aho. I love
Aho. I'm like, what'd you call me? So, Brittany, do you want to close the space?
I'd love to. All right, we're just gonna send so much gratitude into the ether, actually, just for allowing us to open up our consciousness. If you made it this far in the episode and you stuck around, we just send gratitude to you for witnessing this and for allowing us to bring this into your space and into your sphere. We're going to unplug from each other and return back to the time, space, and dimension that's of highest available frequency for each of us, commanding sovereignty at a cellular and DNA level, and allowing these activation triggers to be soft but lead us in the path that each of us individually are here to walk for the highest and greatest good. We just say this wheeling container is set and sealed, and so it is.
And so it is.
I love it. Thank you guys
All
so
right.
much for watching. This has been incredible. Chrys, thank you for sharing everything. And we're going to have
Yes.
lots more fun topics to come on the podcast.
Well, if you'd like to work with me, you can go to chrisking.com, which is all about web design, psychic business mentorship, spiritual brand development. I help lightworkers start businesses and build brands. You can go to medicinealchemist.com, which is where we do microdosing packages, sacred medicine alchemy retreats, and a lot of education around plant medicine and shamanic work. And then, of course, Ascended Dash Astrology is coming soon, and that's where you can go to get your charts, get readings, take courses, learn more about this, and dive deeper. Brittany, where can we find you and work with you?
Yes, easiest place is going to be thebrittanyrenee.com. If you want to link up on TikTok, it's that babe B. On Instagram, the Brittany Renee, and there's link trees also all over the place with clearings and activations. I have a community called the Ether. The first month in the community is always on me. It's an incredible group that we are constantly talking on Telegram. We are in a group setting doing healings and movement, and I teach a lot around embodiment and somatic practices. So if you're looking for a community that's virtual, and we also do retreats, you can find that on the link tree and on the brittanyrenee.com.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. And thank you all again for joining us for this week's episode of Ascend the Matrix podcast. We will see you next time.